There we go. All right. What's this movement called? Come on,
Extension.
guys. Extension. Okay. So shoulder extension, right?
Shoulder.
Okay. So what do we need for halasana and for shoulder stand, Sarvangasana?
Shoulder extension.
We need shoulder extension. Okay. All right. So pretty much everybody here can take their arms behind, right? You can all do shoulder extension. Okay. Emma.
And internal rotation.
And internal rotation, yeah. I was going to say the physio is not allowed to answer, but that's okay. All right. So what would happen if I'm in, show me what's external rotation?
When your arm goes outward.
When your arm goes outward, show it to me. What do you mean your arm goes outward?
So like literally if you put your hand and then you turn your thumb outward is external, and then turning your thumb in is internal without moving at the elbow and the wrist.
Good demonstration. Okay, so show me just by sitting here, because I can see your upper body, what's internal rotation? Okay, what's this? Which a lot of you are doing.
Elevation.
Okay, so show me what's internal rotation. Ava, you don't have to show, Ava and Emma, you don't have to show me. Okay? Okay, so does everybody understand that it's a really small, it's a small movement, okay? So if I am here, this is my arm bone, all it is this. Do you understand that? Right? It's just turning the head of the arm bone in and then out. It doesn't do this or anything. It just turns in and out. Okay. So if you were in external rotation, it's a tiny little movement. Okay. It's just happening here. What would happen if you took the arms back into extension? Do it yourself. So turn yourself into extension. So your hands will face forward and into external rotation. Your hands will face forward probably. Okay. And then take your arm back.
Less movement.
Less movement in what?
In extension.
How far you can extend.
And how far you can extend. Okay. Now really roll your shoulders in. So it's not this action, it's just turning your arm bones in, and now take your arm back. Can you feel it goes further? Yes, no, okay, so as Emma says, internal rotation, taking your arms up goes further. Now all of you can interlace your hands right behind you. So all of you know that therefore you've got that decent enough internal rotation range and extension range to have your arms behind you. But what else do you need for shoulder stand to make it? Okay, what is the issue with shoulder stand, Ava?
You will also have to bend your elbows and try to keep them in, which is way harder than with a straight elbow.
Exactly. So did you all feel that where when you put your arms behind you, it seems to be harder to get the elbows in together, right? It's harder to get them together, right? So why are we even talking about this? What's the issue? What are we trying to explore? What could be, I don't want to say problem, but the kind of Ava, what we're looking at. Sorry, Cara, I didn't see you. Sorry.
So if I have the elbows wider to the side, I will have more pressure on my neck region in that pose. And because the neck is a little bit more vulnerable because the vertebrae are smaller and not made for taking a lot of load, and most people never do it anyway, so it will be a first for them, maybe. That can be a problem. So we want as much weight on the shoulders and arms as possible.
Okay, so that's it, perfect. Carol, were you going to say the same thing? Pretty much the same thing. Okay, so and the key in that is, where would we like the weight to be as much as we possibly can? Okay, and so Eva's saying we're trying, or if we do, it's a very, very difficult thing to do, not to have so much load on the cervical spine. Where would most of the load on the cervical spine be in full neck flexion? Where would it be? Think back to your spine. What's the most prominent place in your spine? I mean, not your spine, your cervical spine, pretty much. For those.
Would it be on C7 where you can feel the knobbly bit?
Okay, yes, and it's not always C7, it's normally C7, T1 kind of thing. But that is probably where the load is going. It's going to be load all the way around your cervical flexion, but that's where the jamming is. That's normally where people feel the pressure. So then Ava said, what we're trying to do with all of this arm stuff is to come up on top of the shoulders, to have the shoulders down and not the cervical spine. So there's one other movement, and I think most of you missed it when in the queue. One other movement that is required so that you are not on T7, C7, T1, those kind of things. What is the other movement? So Ava, I'm going to give Vedette a chance. Vedette?
I'm not 100% sure yet, but would that be pushing into your triceps and lifting your hips to sort of take some of the weight off?
Definitely pushing into your triceps and lifting. What would that create? Bring it back to shoulder. What would that create in your shoulders, Vedette? If I push into my triceps, what would it create?
Bit of a
Martina?
external.
Sorry, there's lots of people here, okay? Martina?
Retraction in the shoulder blades.
Exactly. Okay, so most of you missed it, right? So it's not good enough just to assess range in shoulder extension, because most of us can do, you see me, most of us can just do this, right? I've got my shoulders quite rounded forward, I've got my arms here. But for shoulder stand, that's not enough. That's still good. I'm still going to be compressing my cervical spine. What I need is that, and that is scapular retraction. Stand up, everybody, and if you don't stand up, interlace your arms without retracting your scapula. Just take them back, and most of you can do that because there's nobody here that's got girth in the way. Can you see that your back is just flat, your thoracic? Now draw your shoulder blades together. Okay. So what happens when you draw your shoulder blades together? Retraction, I understand. Yes, taken's good. So the chest is open. But how does that translate into shoulder stand? If I draw...
So does that not...
Sorry?
Sorry, so it picks the chest up, and does it not take the weight a little bit more forward? So less here on the shoulders, and then more kind of rolling it back.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I get it totally, and you definitely are opening the chest more. Just sit like this, and now squeeze your shoulder blades together. What do you feel in terms of muscular contraction? Ava, like muscular feeling, sorry, Ava.
I didn't want to answer for the muscles. I'm just, okay, you will engage the muscles between the shoulder blades, that they are engaging, they are contracting. But I think you will also get a little bit more into extension in the thoracic part, and that will let the C71 vertebrae kind of disappear between those towards the ceiling.
Yes, exactly. So try it here. So I don't know how many of you instruct like this in back bends. It's quite an Iyengar way of instructing, where you do scapular retraction. So if I do scapular retraction here, what's happening to my chest? Like Tegan says, it's lifting. But where's my thoracic spine going? What's jutting out more? Do it, feel it.
The chin is pushing more forward.
But in your back, Tegan. Yeah, definitely, but in your back.
So then we're getting more of that cervical curve in the neck. Sorry, we're getting a deeper curve in the neck.
Exactly. So if you think about it, I'll send you a video because it's probably the best way. So when you interlace your arms, say you're in Halasana first, you interlace your arms, right? What I saw most of you not do is you interlace your arms, you interlace your arms, and you will see me, you interlace your arms like this, and then you go into the front. But very few of you do this action, where you roll your arms back into scapular retraction and then take the arms back. Okay? Very few of you on the pose and in the pose. And the minute you do that, it's exactly what Ava says. So on those slides that you all went through, it talked about shoulder extension and scapular retraction. Okay? That's that action. And that's where you can almost make your cervical spine, or T, lower T, like T1 downwards, almost disappear. So you get onto what we call, that it's not exactly the tops of your shoulders, but in yoga we call it this bit, the tops of your shoulders. Do you understand? Yeah? So what I need you to do, look, if shoulder stand really is icky for you, and we'll talk about why it's icky for you in a second. If shoulder stand's really bad for you, then don't do it. But what I want you to do is send me a video of not just your shoulder extension, but that added action of shoulder retraction, which is, it's not that easy in, it's not that easy in shoulder stand. So where would we do it first?
Uttanasana with the hands interlaced, or wide-legged stance maybe?
Yes, definitely to assess. You'd assess it more standing up, scapular retraction. Or there was a picture of that lady, she was on her bum and she had her hands behind her and she was squeezing her shoulders together, right? There's nodding, right? So you can assess it in that, but when would you do it to get into shoulder stand, Caro?
In bridge?
To get into shoulder stand.
Halasana?
Yeah.
In Halasana, okay? In Halasana. So it's actually, if you just take the arms back into extension in shoulders, not shoulder stand, I beg your pardon, Halasana, and you don't do that retraction there, if you go straight up into shoulders, it's actually really hard. Somebody said, and I can't remember who it was, they really like it when a teacher comes around and pulls them up. Is the person here that said that? Martina, yes, because that's why Martina got the retraction. So I don't know if you've ever had that adjustment, and I used to adjust all my teachers like that. It's probably not the best thing to do in a public class, but you literally lift the person so that they can roll their shoulders under in shoulder stand, because it's really hard to do it themselves in shoulder stand. Why?
Sometimes the triceps are in the way, or something's in the way.
Yes, and what else? What else is there?
Lats. Your lat.
But more than that, Tegan, just a general thing. Emma, Tegan.
Well, I find for me, what I just struggle with kind of the tension between my shoulder blades, kind of wanting to push up. I feel like there's not enough space and length that the pose wants. So I find like a blanket works really well in just lengthening through the shoulders. I don't know if that makes sense.
Definitely. And then that's why the Iyengas use props and blankets, and so that you can drop back, and you can, because it is, the space is taken away from you. You're on the tops of your, or sort of the tops of your shoulders. You've got all of your body weight on top of it. Triceps, and like Ava said earlier, it's difficult to get your elbows in. And then in order to do that rolling action, you almost have to lift your whole body up, roll it over, and it can be done, but a lot of stuff's in the way. So why would it be easier to do that action in Halasana? Emma?
There's less weight.
Yeah, what Tegan said.
What Tegan said, yeah.
Great.
Is less weight, okay? Because in Halasana, you can also adjust yourself in Halasana, and we're not in a variety of loaded ways. So you can get a Halasana where you're stacking your pelvis bang on top of your neck, right? So the load is heavy on your neck, but still not as much as shoulder stand. Or you can do Halasana where your pelvis is a little bit further away from your neck, okay? Not over your neck, but and you can adjust quite easily and roll your shoulders underneath. Has anybody ever been taught to do that action of the shoulders, the retraction of the shoulder, by using a mat, their mat? Has anybody done that? Ava, have you done it in normal yoga or Iyengar yoga? Not that Iyengar is not normal.
In normal yoga for bridge, I think it's the same action there.
Exactly the same action. So I don't know if it comes from Iyengar yoga, but in Iyengar yoga, they make you do it all the time. Halasana, bridge. You take the sides of your mat and you roll your shoulders under. And it's actually, I'll try and send you a video of it. It's a really effective action. It still doesn't mean your shoulder stand is going to be the lightest, easiest thing in the world, but at least then you're not dumping heavily on the cervical spine. And now I don't practice shoulder stand because there's other inversions I prefer. But if I do it, I can keep my cervical curve pretty much because of rolling the shoulders under. Does all that make sense? Yes? No? If ask if you don't, if it doesn't make sense. All right? Okay, so what else can be going on in shoulder stand that makes it really icky, Emma?
I just typed it in the chat, but your pecs can be quite tight. If your pecs are tight, you're going to struggle to retract. So it's something to think about if that's your peak pose, to actually stretch into the pecs as well.
Completely and utterly. And then I found, I think it was Claire. Claire couldn't get her shoulders into the right position, and she was convinced it's because of her pecs. But then I made her go and do those other little poses with the arms behind, and she's got no problems whatsoever with the pecs. It's much more of an actual skill engagement of trying to actually, so whether it's on the mat or whether it's lifting up, it's how to do it. So we kind of worked out how to do it. What else can be a problem in Halasana or shoulder stand? For those.
In Halasana, it could also be a hamstring or a calf muscle tightness that would maybe restrict you.
Absolutely. And then if somebody had not so flexy hamstrings, what would happen then?
Their feet wouldn't get to the floor.
Their feet wouldn't get to the floor. So that would be like a suspended load in the air. And what do we know about, so if I tell you to do Trikonasana with your hand on the ground, and then I tell you to float up a bit, what happens to the load, the work? Tegan?
It goes from heavy, or there goes from load to no load. So in Halasana, with the legs floating, the toes could be on the ground, taking some of that load out. And then with the legs hovering, maybe knees bent, it's just kind of crunching, I presume, on this bulgy bit on the neck. the top part that we don't want.
It could definitely be a little bit more load. And I'm sure you guys have seen it when you teach sometimes. It often happens to people who are like Emma. They're not that flexy all over. They don't have flexy pecs. They may have Caro's favorite new English word, more girth, so wider arms and triceps. She keeps saying in her video, she goes, girth. A lot. That's really cute. Girth. So they may have so they can't roll onto their upper body, and then they're rolling, and their spine's not that flexy, and then they've got legs hovering in the air. So all not necessarily the funnest thing, not bad and evil, but not the funnest thing. And what else can make halasana? Sorry, Anya. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
The other thing is maybe it's more of a sensory thing, but the restriction on the throat, sometimes people can't deal with that.
Yes. I think this is missed again and again and again. And it doesn't just happen because there's boobs in the way or girth or because they can't get the legs over, and it's an actual, I like that word, sensory feeling. One of my first 500 hours, Bianca McHarg is probably, I want to say, the best yoga practitioner I've ever seen in my whole life, like ever. She can do everything. She's super, super strong, super, super flexible. It's insane. She really is. She hates shoulder stand because she actually did her research project on it, because she gets the sensory sensation here in the throat, and it absolutely freaks her out. This is a woman who could do handstand presses and one-arm handstand and all of that, but she can't stand this feeling. What do we think that feeling might be? Hagen?
Well, I don't have this experience, but from what I know, it's a claustrophobia feeling.
Yes, maybe.
From some of my students who struggle with this pose, that's what comes up as like a very can't breathe feeling. Yes. That's what I don't have the experience, so I don't actually know. Maybe.
I think that's what she concluded when she did her research project. She concluded that it was actually a claustrophobic feeling. Can you think of another? What happens to most people in halasana and not necessarily in shoulder stand if we're doing this kind of action? What happens to the cervical spine?
Get stretched more.
Lauren, sorry, I've got to wait for the little yellow box so I can see where the voice is coming from. So it gets stretched more. So what does that mean it's doing?
Flexing more.
It's flexing more, and then
compressing the front.
Yeah, so it's being completely stretched, and then where is my chin going?
To your chest?
To my chin. Okay, so do that now. Right down. How does it feel for you?
Like I can't breathe.
So, I mean, does it feel good for you when you do it like that here? I mean, anybody, does it feel good? It's like Yalandhara Bandha. So does it feel good? Like for some people, it's okay. For Caro, it's okay. For other people, not so okay. But then you're adding load on top of it, okay? So it's like, bring your chin to your chest now, right down. And now don't do this, but try and pull down slightly, okay, against your chest. Okay? I can see Firdause's range is like not happy, doesn't like it at all. So when I look at you all doing that, Vedette's doing this, going from side to side, like wants to go that way. Firdaus is like, no way, I'm not pulling down. She's about here. Caro is like chin to chest, quite happy, etc. So you can see that shoulder stand is like quite a complex thing, Caro.
I think what also might be a thing is like I experience that sometimes, is like being in the pose and you're told to not move your head, and then you feel like you want to swallow, but it gets difficult to swallow. And so this whole, this whole situation, this whole compression here can just kind of limit, in a way, a very basic function of your body that might just feel strange and uncomfortable.
Yes, and it can be just like a brand new experience, but it is it's a bit of an odd thing. You know, when we're doing bridges and things, we tend to open up here, which we're much more used to. Whereas this it's you know, it's okay if we drop our head, but to actually then pull on top can be, people have neck issues, you know, whether it's my neck is stiff from working all day, or actually do not like that feeling, get away from it. You know, so it's quite a complex pose. Can you tell me, in all of the vinyasa yoga classes you teach or you go to, how common is shoulder stand in your world? Tegan?
So I come from Jivamukti, and to do a Jivamukti sequence, you have to teach shoulder stand for 5 minutes, yes, and head stand for 5 minutes, and it has to be one or the other, ideally both, and it has to be 5 minutes to be a Jivamukti class.
To be a Jivamukti class. So that's really interesting, right? And then who else had their hand up? Fidos, Vidette, Juliet, up you go. Claire. Fidos?
Oh no, I just had my hand up saying, yes, we always have it in vinyasa classes.
Okay, that's it. You always have it in vinyasa classes. Vidette?
We don't have it much in the vinyasa class, but in Iyengar, it's every single class, with props, everything, yeah.
Tell them how long you would hold shoulder stand for in Iyengar yoga.
As long as we possibly can, but yeah, we often get told that it should be at least 10 minutes, and especially as being doing your teacher training, and yeah, we do get reminded. I definitely don't hold that long, but we definitely get reminded how long we should be holding for. Headstand power.
This is really interesting. So vinyasa yoga for dose, in your experience, how long do you hold it for? About?
No, not long at all. It would basically be halasana, shoulder stand, ear pressure pose, fish pose, shavasana. So it's that same ashtanga thing that we were talking about earlier, but not long, like not even a minute.
So how long? Less than a minute?
Yeah, less than a minute, I'd say.
Less than a minute. So Iyengar 10 minutes, Jivamukti 5, Vidette.
I must be honest.
Sorry. Juliet, sorry. Can't hear you.
I would say 1 or 2 minutes, but it's like Fiados. Yeah, we do the same sequencing poses.
Okay, in vinyasa.
Yeah.
In vinyasa. Anybody else have any other experience of shoulder stand? No? Oh, Caro.
Yeah, I already also wrote it in the chat, but I feel like I hardly see it anymore in like vinyasa classes. It's kind of disappeared and got replaced by headstand. So I feel like headstand has become more common. It's still not in every class. There are classes that do not have any of these two inversions at all. But I feel like shoulder stand kind of has become, in a way, old-fashioned. Or maybe like not in style, or at least that's my association with it. Like not my personal one, but somehow I feel that this might be the case.
Okay, so in your vinyasa classes that you go to, so what, do they end the class with headstand?
Some do, some put headstand in the middle. I think the most common thing that vinyasa classes end are with seated forward folds and reclined twists, stuff like this. Okay. Like the ending it with a headstand, I feel like is Jivamukti. I see that there. And then sometimes in like other classes where it's just like if you know how to do a headstand, then do a headstand, and if not, do a happy baby or something.
Good options. Headstand or happy baby. Okay, all right. Interesting. So you can see it. I mean, it really, why do we think that? I mean, it sounds like for most of you, not Caro, the shoulder stand's fairly common in classes. Why do we think it's fairly common? And sounds like maybe more common than headstand in the South African context, I guess. Why? For those.
Maybe because people think that headstand would be more dangerous because it also includes your head. And so they want to protect people by doing an inversion, but doing one which they think is easier.
Okay, all right. So that's what I would guess. I would say it's put in because it's the easiest inversion. I'm not talking about Jivamukti or Iyengar, but in Vinyasa flow, I would hazard a guess that it's the easiest, most accessible inversion, right? It doesn't really, nobody really teaches it, I don't think. Has anybody had an experience in Vinyasa where shoulder stand is actually taught rather than offered? Tegan?
So again, in Jivamukti, when they do like a beginner course, they'll do, and I've done the beginner classes, they'll stop the class and show you padding and all of that. So they do try to teach it if you're going to, it is a beginner class, but no, I guess not in a Vinyasa class. But I have been taught how to pad.
Yeah.
But maybe not in a group class. I think in my group class, I would definitely encourage padding though, because I find if I struggle, I just imagine what everyone else thinks.
Yeah. Has everybody?
But I actually don't teach it that much.
Yeah, no, I don't teach it either. Just because. Has everybody experienced prop shoulder stand? No. Juliet, you haven't. Martina hasn't. No. Lauren, no? Or yes?
Yes. Yeah, I have props. Yeah. Sorry. Did I get it confused?
So does it feel better for you propped?
No.
So Tegan's going yes, Caro's going no, Lauren's going no. Pedosis, yes. So it's a whole. Caro, why not?
For me, it feels like it's a body proportion thing. So I would have to line up. So the blankets that you always fold, they're never long enough for my upper arms. So it takes me a lot of wriggling, just getting into it, and a lot of blanket space. And then it's just difficult for me to get like the right length where my arms are on it, but then the neck is free, and it doesn't make a difference for me. I also feel like I'm kind of sliding off the blanket, so it feels less stable in my personal experience, and I do not have any issues with shoulder stand without props, so I prefer that one.
Okay, and it's definitely a habit as well. Who said it feels better with props? Tegan, I think. So, and Vidette, I think, with props. Okay, so Vidette with props, do you prefer?
Yeah, I definitely do prefer, and I must say our younger teacher will prop and prop and prop until we are comfortable, and I must say sometimes we spend a lot of time propping, so by the time you do get up, you don't want to just get up again. But yeah, a lot of props.
I love that. Like they would never allow you just to be on blankets. You've got to have the mat folded on top of the blankets.
Yes.
This far away from the edge of the final blanket. You've got to roll your arms under. It's a whole drama. It's not worth coming down when you get up there, even if you fall. If you say I'm sore, they'll then fiddle around again and make you go up. So it's like, yeah. So you can see it's actually a really complex pose, which is really what I wanted you guys to know. So we range from Vinyasa, which says just do it, to Jivamukti 5 minutes, Iyengar, fiddling around and propping to death. And actually it is so dependent on the person. We've got claustrophobia things, we've got boobs falling in your face, we've got hamstring issues, all of those kind of things. And I mean, can you tell me why it would be good to teach shoulder stand? And it's not a judgment or a criticism or anything, but just any reason that it's quite a good thing to teach. Ashton.
Yes, Catherine, because as you mentioned before, it is probably the most accessible inversion. So it gives people the sense of being inverted at the rudimentary or basic beginner level.
I think that's a really valid reason, because it's a different, perhaps a different experience perception wise. You know, it's like, whoa, a lot of people come
Exactly
they've
right.
never gone upside down ever. So maybe there's validity in that it's beneficial, shall we say, to maybe go upside down. But then what I would say is that's great, but then maybe us vinyasa teachers should possibly consider teaching it rather than just offering it, so we could get those, you know, just once or twice, a couple of little cues going in. So it's not a bad and evil pose, but I think it can be quite a tough pose if we just throw it out there and go, hey, everybody shoulder stand, and then get on with it. Especially what Fido said when you're doing that classic Ashtanga, Halasana, shoulder stand, Kanipindasana, and then into Matsyasana, which is fish pose. It's like, you know, quite challenging cervical spine wise. Okay, I'm done. Oh, sorry, Fido.
I just want to ask you, because maybe this is, I've gone too far forward in the videos, but when you spoke about headstand and kind of your own, like not reluctance, but I guess you don't teach headstand that much. Is it for that reason that we were discussing about that the head is involved? And like, I don't really like even prepping for it because I feel too much on my cervical spine. And I think I was telling you, I've had treatment on my shoulders and for like tight traps and that sort of stuff. Is that kind of what it is? Like that you just think it's...
Why I don't teach it.
Yeah.
Nowadays, after all of this time in teaching, I really like teaching poses where people have to work hard. I don't like teaching poses that are just accessible. I don't mind, like Ashton's idea, I don't mind teaching a shoulder stand, but it wouldn't be my go-to pose for inversion. Headstand, same thing. I don't mind headstand, but I know cervical spine-wise, it's not the easiest thing to do in a group class. I also know, and I don't want to, this is probably very different for most of you guys here, perhaps, is that headstand for me is a non-event. I could, if my neck didn't hurt, I could stay up there for an hour. I can run upside down. I can fling my legs around. It's like an easy pose for me. And I feel like it just doesn't build up any strength. And I'm very strength focused. It's the same reason that I don't teach Ustrasana as a normal Ustrasana. I would much rather work harder and teach Upadanyarasana, wheel. So I almost go for the bigger things, but with strength attached to them. So my go-to is headless headstand, always. And just to build up the strength. And then I really feel that, you know, if you've got the strength in headless headstand, then when you go down to headstand, you've got the required strength, you know, to take a bit of load off your neck. So, but I'm not anti it. And I definitely teach it I teach tripod for when we go, tripod headstand for when we do arm balances up there, because you have to teach tripod. So and I just know that the people I teach it to, they're my advanced teachers, and they know what to do. And they're also very vocal, so that if they know their cervical spine, they just go, I'm not doing it, no way. And they look after themselves. So yeah, but a lot going on in headstand, and you'll explore a little bit of that next week. So can we move on? Is everybody okay now? Can we move on? Okay, because we're running out of time as per normal. I just want to talk very quickly, because it's going to have to be quick, about what's going on with the shoulders in downward dog. Okay. Flexion, okay, shoulder flexion in downward dog, all right? What degree of shoulder flexion are we looking for? Ashton.
Well, I think that depends on the type of downward dog you're trying to achieve, Catherine. If you're trying to do the typical Iyengar version with the forehead closer to the floor, you're going to need a substantial degree of shoulder flexion, whereas your normal downward dog, long or short, is a pretty average range of 180 degrees.
Yes, exactly. So perfect. So if it's a BKS Iyengar downward dog, then you can see what. Did you all look at that picture of BKS Iyengar? You know, downward dog where you put your forehead on the ground. Okay, so can we all agree that his shoulder flexion in that is a bit beyond 180 degrees? Okay, is it bad? That's like an answer to Caro's doing this.
I think that would have been would have to be the decision of the individual. I mean, if he's fine with it, I don't think it's bad.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Always, it depends on the individual. For some of us, that would not be necessarily, wouldn't feel that comfortable, maybe, and for others, maybe feels absolutely great. What does that pose look like to you in terms of his shoulder flexion? Like another pose. A good other pose. Anya.
It's more like a slight back bend because the arms and the shoulders are in such flexion that it's going backwards.
So it's a back bend, right? Okay, so what back bend? Anya, you answered, so now I'm going to keep going.
Did answer. What back bend? Ustasana. I mean, if you're standing, I know you don't have the hip flexion, but from the waist up.
Okay, what are your arms doing in Ustasana?
In Ustasana, you've got your shoulder external rotation and then flexion.
You're talking about Urdhva Dhanurasana. Talking about wheel or camel?
Neither.
Is it chair pose, Papa?
No, where you're standing and you just have a slight back bend.
Oh, so just going back like this.
Yeah.
So Ustasana with the back bend, yes. But that's fine. I thought you said Ustrasana, sorry. So let's think about another back bend. What back bend has you in shoulder flexion? And the greater your shoulder flexion, like BKS Iyengar, the nicer, more comfortable the pose. Who does?
That has to be wheel pose, because if you have nice shoulder flexion, then you will feel nice. If you don't, then you won't feel nice.
Yeah, and it's a classic thing in yoga that we'll do something like a lot of yoga teachers will say, if somebody's in downward dog and they're in that scoopy back bend, look, that's not good, and then they'll go and teach wheel later in the class. Okay, so it's if we keep bringing it back to ranges of joints, so bigger shoulder flexion, so long range of shoulder flexion, that's like a lot of shoulder flexion, or shorter range of shoulder flexion. Okay, it's just ranges. And when would it become injurious or like risky? Janine.
If you don't have the capability for that range of motion.
Okay, so if you don't have the capability for that range of motion, and how would you not have the capability? What would be the situation that you wouldn't, besides having an injury? For dose?
Is if you haven't loaded it enough, so you're suddenly doing something you've not done before, and then it's like too much too soon.
Too much too soon. Okay, so somebody, and we often get this in vinyasa, you know, we get new people coming into our classes that haven't really done yoga before, and they will pull into really long ranges of poses. So that's like really hanging in the arms in downward dog, and that may be too much too soon for them at a long range. Okay, so that's it, but it's not inherently dangerous itself. I don't think it was very dangerous for BKS Iyengar. And I think if you're going to teach wheel, then actually hanging in the arms in a downward dog may not be so bad. What do you do with the arms in wild thing, the shoulders? The same. I like all the arms doing this.
Quite big shoulder flexion, right? Because you...
And when we start to take the leg over backwards, what's happening to the shoulder flexion? Are we hanging in the arms or not?
It starts taking load and weight, and then we start hanging into it for sure.
Yes, yeah. So so we are hanging into the arms in our wild thing as you go back, and the shoulders are skewed. One of them is really pulling you're pulling into your absolute maximum range. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to take the leg over. And then when we go from wild thing into, I don't know the name of it, I always get it wrong. Flip the dog. What is it when you go into wheel from it? Come on, you vinyasa teachers. What's it called?
Isn't it just like wild thing to wheel?
I don't know. I never know. And everybody, when I listen to vinyasa classes, there are so many new words now that I'm like, I don't know what it means. Okay, but yeah, so you basically taking them from downward dog, and then you might say, ooh, don't hang in the shoulders, but now go into wild thing. Don't hang in the shoulders, but now go into wheel. The person is going to use their absolute amount of shoulder flexion, because that's going to make the pose way comfy. Okay, much more comfortable than me. All right, so what happens in Adho Mukha? So now that we talked about the hanging, so that's more of a shoulder flexion range. What happens in Adho Mukha, in downward dog, and in Hastasana if I instruct shoulders away from the ears? Taryn.
So that'll, like, shoulders away from your ears, it'll bring your shoulder blades going down. So like depression of the shoulder blades, when you kind of, well, I would think you would want them to be moving with the arms and going to help you get more flexion to make the pose more accessible.
Okay, so if everybody put up an arm, just put it up, okay? Take hold of your scapula if you can and pull it down. Pull it down. What happens to your arm?
Comes down.
It comes down. Does anybody's not come down? Everybody's hands down, so I'm presuming everybody's comes down. So what does that mean if I instruct shoulders away from the ear, draw your shoulder blades onto your back? What does that mean in downward dog if my arm pulls down? Kara.
Almost coming a bit forward, right? Like kind of on the way to the plank.
Exactly. So you're going to reduce what? That's exactly, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what happens. We're going to change a shape. Ava.
Yeah, there's less extension, flexion available. And that is what Carol said. Less flexion will eventually go towards plank.
So that's perfect. So does everybody understand that? Does anybody not understand it? I will not think you're silly if you don't understand it, okay? If I'm from the side and I take my arm into 180 shoulder flexion, if I pull it down, my arm will go forward, okay? Up, down. Does everybody understand that? Claire? Can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm saying mine doesn't move forward. I'm turning sideways.
It does. You're just looking at it from a different angle. It moves forward from here. You probably not feel you're doing this, okay? But the way to do it is you're going to send me a video and you're going to do it against the wall and you're going to do it in downward dog, okay? So because as soon as you bring the scapula down, you've stopped that upward rotation of the scapula, and the joints work together. Does everybody understand that? So the scapula, glenohumeral joint, Ava, I'll be with you now. And so the minute you pull the one thing down, like if I came and pulled your t-shirt down, it will draw your shoulder down, okay? But we'll work through a video. Ava?
Maybe it also helps to try it the other way around, to keep the shoulder blades down while the arms are still by the side of the body, and then try to elevate the arm without elevating the shoulder blade as well. And then you will see that you can't elevate it very much. It's just really restricted.
Restricted. Claire, in a really good way is in the videos, I say where a really good way of doing it is to wear a t-shirt and get somebody to hold your t-shirt down, like pull it down like this, because it's lats. lats, that's the action of lats, which is a depressor, and then it's going to be really tough for you to bring your shoulders up. But that's a good idea, Ava. Thank you. Emma.
So I've just been thinking, like, where does this cue come from? And I'm not going to lie to you, I hate treating shoulders. Like when somebody comes in and they tell me they've got a sore shoulder, I'm like, oh, geez, like.
That's a good go. You don't like this.
So shoulders it's such a complex joint, and there's so many muscles involved, so many. So I distinctly remember us working through stabilizer muscles. I mean, this is now physio thought pattern. When you work with dysfunction, you want to reactivate stabilizers, and you get something called global stabilizers, which are stabilizing muscles that move. So they're not just like mobilizers. And your middle and your lower traps, because your trap's a massive muscle, but we actually break it up into 3 parts because of how the fibers lie. So I wonder if that cue didn't come from, you know, a dysfunction point of view, whereas you want to keep this. I know serratus anterior keeps the scapula flat against the thorax, basically, but you know, in movement, especially overhead movements, those middle and lower traps actually play a role. So I wonder if that's not actually where it comes from, why people do it.
Honestly, when I try to work it out, the only thing I thought about in the slide is I thought that it's that kind of thing where people do not like to see the upper trap shrugging up against the ear, and people go, ow, 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 my neck. But I really genuinely don't know. But all I can tell you is personally, because I've just got about 180 degrees flexion, I spent my years in pain because people kept telling me to draw down. And it was only when I looked at BKS Iyengar and I saw that he did this in poses, and I started training for handstands and handstand presses, and they do totally the opposite. They say, push, make your traps really, really strong. And I was like, oh my word, this has changed everything. So I don't know, Emma, it's really interesting. So I'll be back with you and Caro, and then Emma back again.
Yeah, I think it comes a lot from this, like, yeah, tension or not creating more tension in the neck, like, but it feels like it's maybe one of these things again where one person felt like, oh, this works for me, so it must work for everyone, because if I do this, it definitely feels uncomfortable for me, so kind of relaxing here a bit has me feeling a lot more at ease in the pose. And the same with downward dog, like kind of rotating the arms out a bit works extremely well for me and gives me more, yeah, ease in the pose. But as you also said in the presentation, what's true for me might be completely wrong for everyone. And also some people might be here without kind of like cramping up to get into a certain shape, and they might be fine, and then saying everybody kind of depress the shoulder blades. Yeah, for a person like you, for example, you say it feels like completely awkward and maybe even, yeah, uncomfortable physically. So
I think there's 2 things in that as well, is that I think the cue to depress the shoulder blades is anatomically incorrect for everybody. Okay, there's a different thing saying draw your shoulders away from your ears slightly, or that may reduce in someone like me shoulder flexion, and then I'll be like, I don't want to, I want to push. I like pushing, I like being strong there. But to actually say draw your shoulder blades down your back is anatomically, if we take what Ava said earlier, you know, for Claire to hold her shoulder blades on her back and then lift her arm up, she's not going to be able to. You saw that in the scapulohumeral rhythm slide, which is like literally you can only take your arm up 30 degrees, 30, that's it, before your scapula starts to go up. Right? So the actual instruction to say draw your scapula or your shoulder blades down on your back is anatomically, it's impossible. You can't do it. You can do it for 30 degrees, but we're asking for 180. So there's that, and then there's the other maybe you know, for some people, draw your shoulders away from you, or more spreading of the shoulders, which is what I saw. Was it Taryn doing, or Lauren? No, Taryn, I think. That's really spreading of the shoulders because she's got a great shoulder flexion. But it's a really complex thing. So it's like, I really don't think anybody should be cueing shoulder blades down on your back or in Hastasana. You know, you saw that yoga journal thing. I literally copied it from yoga journal. It's like, keep your shoulder blades on your down on your back. It's like, you can't. It's not true. Roxy, you've got your hand up. Sorry, I haven't seen it till now.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Quick question with another cueing that people use in down dog is like they kind of doing the metaphor of opening two cookie jar out or whatever. Like, I don't know if you guys heard that before, but that's like so in Cape Town, like so many studios cue this where you are in down dog, you got to draw your shoulders down, like we say now, and then on top of that, you need to kind of like spread your two shoulder blades out, like as if you're opening the two cookie jar. Like it's so strange, and I never understood like this cueing, so I wanted to know if anyone was familiar with this.
The cookie jar, I've honestly never heard it. So it's so I know in lots of yogas they're always talking about spiraling the triceps, rolling the triceps.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the cookie jar thing, where they're keeping external rotation. I think is what they mean. If they want that action, I think. And does anybody know what it actually means? I mean, I don't know. I think they might be cueing external. Where's Roxy? There we go. External rotation. Or if they're talking about the shoulder blades, cookie jar, it may be protraction.
I think it's called external. It's like that external rotation, and then that squeezing in. But is that then a right cue to get that external rotation of the biceps, like in down dog? I'm just confused.
Watch the next videos, and we're going to talk about external rotation next week, because those next two videos, the external rotation cueing is a very complex cueing for a lot of different reasons. So watch that. We're definitely going to be watching. We're going to chat about that next week. And I think that spiraling, or I like the cookie jar thing, the cookie jar, there's a lot of external rotation chat in that. And again, why we do it, we'll talk next week. Does anybody have anything else they want to say? Because it's 2 minutes past 2 and I don't want to keep you guys for Joe's.
Catherine, sorry, can I just check? Do we have a chat on Thursday or not?
Yes.
Yes, okay, cool. Because you were saying next week.
My days here, because I'm doing part-time course on the weekends. I don't even know if it's Thursday or where I am. So today's Tuesday, right? Wednesday's Ava, and then Thursday you've got me again, and then Friday Ava again. Okay, so I've sent you a message on the group. We've got a load more things to work through because I want to tie this up, because I think our last chat is next week, right? So I want to kind of tie up everything. So if you guys have got questions, please send me messages and we can work accordingly. Okay, sorry, Roxy? If you need to go, guys, off you go.
Tomorrow, do we only have Ava, or do we also have a class in the morning?
Just Ava, and I can't remember the exact times, but I think Ava's put it on your group.
But isn't that also the other neuroscience, the one that you organized? Is it also tomorrow?
I think she's next week. I'm not sure. Sorry, I will go and look at that. I can't remember all the scheduling, but she might be next week, but I'll double check now after this chat and I'll put it on the group. I think it's next week. I think she's on the 23rd or 22nd. But yeah, 22nd, Caro's saying, so she's next week. Okay, anybody got any questions? You're all good? Bye guys, have a lovely day. See you just now, Tegan. I'll send you a message. Okay, all right, bye.